Hello, it's Karan from San Francisco.
And this is Alex from Los Angeles, and welcome to Movies That Shaped Us. We are two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but we're both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we'll cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through three of our favorite movies. So, Karan, how's been? We've been off for about a month from our listeners. How have you been?
Pretty good. Happy New Year to you and Happy
Yeah.
New Year to everybody. Yeah, it sort of feels like it's been a longer than just a month, but I hope you all haven't missed us too much.
Yeah, no, it has felt like a long time for me too, and I'm definitely excited and glad to be back and to kind of jump back into users' feeds. And yeah, let's yeah, what are we talking about today? Actually, then we have Valentine's Day coming up. Why don't you explain to our
Yeah.
listeners what the topic is today?
Yeah, so we sort of scratched a bunch of ideas and themes around Valentine's Day, but the thing that we locked in on was basically movies that shaped our meet cute moments.
Hmm.
But just felt like a cute, fun way to ring in a new year, coming back on the pod as well. But before we dive a little bit deeper, Alex, what is a meet cute?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a I want to say like literary term. I don't know how you kind of classify it, but it's essentially the moment in a story when the two romantic leads meet for the first time, and it's usually a fun situation of like someone they both grab for the same umbrella, or someone falls down,
Mhm.
or they're trying to get into the same cab, and it's like, oh, whose cab is this? Usually it's some fun little cute, which is why I meet cute moment in
Right.
a story. But it's not only just in stories. I think this is again something that happens in real life. Like I can definitely say, I've been in situations where, I mean, romantic and but also non-romantic. Like you can kind of bump into a friend in a way that you sort of start talking about something and then it ends up evolving into something totally different. But that meet cute moment is that initial moment when two people, maybe I'll make it really general, like two people
Yeah.
meet for the first time unexpectedly, and now they share some connection. Now, because it's the Valentine's Day episode, like the movies we're going to talk about and the situations are kicking off some romance, whether it's a one night stand, a lifetime together. It doesn't really matter how long the relationship is, but it's really we're focusing on that meet cute moment. So do you think that did a good job of kind of
Oh
explaining it to
yeah.
folks who weren't familiar with the term?
Perfect. No, that was perfect, Alex. That is very well done.
Thank you.
So, as I was thinking about meet cute movies, I sort of think about what makes a good meet cute movie, and here are
Hmm.
some observations, and I would love your thoughts on that. So,
Yeah.
number one, the gag itself as to how they meet, whether it's the umbrella picking or
Hmm.
getting in the cab, like what is that moment or event that causes these two people to come together? I think the quality of that, the absurdity of that, the oddity of that, the I the comic nature of it, whatever that is, I think
Hmm.
that has to be, that to me is pretty important because that ultimately becomes the hook of the entire story. So that's
Right.
number one.
Right.
Number two, once the meet cute has happened, how do these people then get to know each other? What does that rest of the day look like? What activities do they do? What is the banter between? And really, because you could have the meet cute and then sort of go your separate ways. But
Right.
what makes a good meet cute story is that these people then start to develop a relationship. So I think how they
Hmm.
develop that relationship is pretty important. Number three, which is to me about the worlds that these two people come from and the people that inhabit those worlds. To me,
Hmm.
that's kind of important because it adds a lot more texture and also a lot more depth to who the two main characters are, but also brings in elements of conflict or, the friend or the mother or the dad or whoever of these people pushing them together and pushing them apart. So
Hmm.
I think it sort of enriches the story quite a bit. And the more sort of thought through and detailed the worlds of these two people are, I think the more the whole thing, I don't want to use the word believable, but it makes it more believable. It also, makes you as a viewer a lot more invested in their story because
Right.
then these two people are real. They're not just, farcical, two-dimensional sort of people roaming around. They feel real because they have real
Hmm.
lives, at least to me. And then
Right.
the last thing and the final thing I would say is this whole thing is farcical and fantastical, and it doesn't work if the chemistry of the two actors doesn't work. And to me, I
Totally.
think they're the ones who are selling this whole thing. And in cases when, they don't do a great job in doing so, and you're not sort of charmed by them in some way, and you don't, because ultimately you as an audience are being charmed by the two of them charming each other in some way or the other, right?
Right,
So
right.
that is important for you to root for this whole thing. And then, because of that, also make the whole thing believable. At least for me, when the two people are not selling that through their chemistry, then I start poking holes in the whole thing of like, this
Right,
is not
right.
believable. This would never happen. The point is, none of it is believable actually. But what makes it believable is these two people and their chemistry. So yeah, that was sort of my list of things that make a good meet cute movie story.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, for me, I second everything you said, and those are all really important elements for sure. The one thing I'll add, or maybe the two things, is that the
Mm.
meet cute for me, that actual moment, the more mundane and like regular it is, and believable that
That's the
thing can
point.
happen, is better
Yeah.
for me because there are some movies and stories where it's like, oh, these are two survivors of a plane crash, and like,
Right.
okay, like that's interesting, but that's not the same thing as like we're both trying to hail a cab, and which is something that has happened to me. Like I'm trying to hail a
True.
cab and someone else kind of steals it. It's like how the more mundane that initial meeting is, I think to me the more interesting, because then it makes it the more magical, because then it can happen to anyone. Like not
I
everyone's going
agree.
to be the two survivors on a plane crash, and now like you guys, you and this other person start a relationship together or have a connection. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like everyone can, reaching for the same jar of pickles at the grocery store, or someone falls down and you just happen to be the one that wants to pick them up, or like the more
Right.
mundane the moment is, because I do believe that meet cute, an important part of that is some magic there. And to me,
Yeah.
in a weird way, to counterbalance the fact that you can have an instant connection with someone, or create a relationship based on something so mundane, you have to balance that magic off with the situation itself being very grounded and everyday. Because
I
the whole
totally
idea
agree.
of a meet cute maybe is some sort of romantic fantasy. I just happen to believe in it. But I think it's harder to latch onto that belief if that initial meeting is some incredible, like, oh, the two astronauts that happen to be in the same capsule together. It's like, okay,
Right.
like maybe that's happened, but I'm not. It doesn't feel the same thing as if something super mundane
I
happens. So that's the
totally
one thing
agree.
that I'll add.
I totally agree. So with that, what is your number three meet cute movie?
Great. I'll kick it off then. My number three movie that shaped my meet cute moment is Bottle Rocket from 1996. So
Oh,
this film is written and directed by Wes Anderson. It's actually his first feature film, starring Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, James Caan, and a bunch of other folks. The IMDb plot summary: three friends plan to pull off a simple robbery and go on the run. So the plot summary definitely doesn't sound like a romantic movie.
no.
And actually, this movie is not just about a romance either. There is a heist element of this too. It's a very kind of zany comedy. But I really like the moments in me, and then the reason why I put this on my list that really resonate is a relationship that Anthony, played by Luke Wilson, gets into and has with a member of a hotel staff that he's staying with, called Inez. Well, first of all, have you seen this film? Had you seen this film before?
Yeah, I had seen it before, but I actually had forgotten about this
The
meet cute
romance.
thing
Yeah.
and the romance. And then when I watched it again for the podcast, I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, of course. And I don't know, I had a smile throughout the entire time these two people
Yeah.
were together.
Yeah.
It I'll let you obviously get into it more, but yeah, it's just so perfect, and it sort of nails what you said, that this is something that could happen to really anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it sort of checks a lot of the things on my list of a good meet cute movies.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Okay.
loved it.
Well, okay, cool. Yeah. So, it is not a movie I think that is remembered a lot for the extent that it's not a romantic comedy,
No.
but for me, this relationship and their moment, especially their initial meeting, always resonated with me. So,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that's important about this and why I put this on my list is, this is meeting someone can give you a focus and direction in your life. Like this initial meet cute in the beginning of a relationship can help someone who feels kind of lost be found in a certain way. And Anthony, who's the main character here, played by Luke Wilson, like I mentioned, he in the beginning of the film, he's leaving like a mental hospital that he checked himself into because he has a line in the movie about like, I just woke up one day and just didn't want to be surrounded with anyone that I'm surrounded with. He didn't like the way his life was going and sort of wanted to reset the whole thing. So he's clearly directionless. His best
Mm-hmm.
friend, played by Owen Wilson, Dignan, they immediately are like, let's plan this heist. And then he's sort of He didn't even have like a 50-year plan. So he's very like, he has a direction, he has a checklist. And Luke's just kind of, or Anthony, is kind of going along with it. But you can tell he's still aimless and directionless. But then once he meets Inez, he has a direction in life now. He wants to just be with this woman, start a relationship with this woman, and that is all that is important to him. So I think, to me, like I've definitely found in my relationships, sometimes, especially the ones that you're not looking for, kind of unexpectedly fall, on your plate, and you can't help but, pursue it and see where it leads you. And then there is now a direction to your life if you want to follow this person and this relationship and kind of see where it goes. So I think that is a really important part in this film. But I want to focus a little bit on this initial meet cute moment. So I think it's just very well done. And again, something that I think it captures the emotions and feelings of when you see someone and have, it's not necessarily love at first sight, but it's like an attraction at first sight. So Anthony's in the pool, and he's sort of like, sitting by the side of the pool. And then the camera suddenly zooms in on him. And then he looks over and sees Inez, who's a maid at this hotel. And the song comes up. It does this really great montage of like showing, like zooming in on like her hair as she's kind of putting it up in a bun, and then shows her feet and her shoes. It's like a very quick sort of Wes Anderson-y, like, a couple of quick images. But to me, it really captures that, like, it is, at least from my experience, when you do feel this connection and have this meet cute moment, it's like, it's the little things about the person that all of a sudden you notice.
Totally.
You are like, oh, she's listening to this song, and you remember that. It's like, oh, her hair was sort of like this, or him or her. Like, I don't want to make it, just for me, it would be a woman, but, they would, you remember these small little things. And I think the way that Wes sort of does that quick montage kind of captures that. Do you know what I mean? Is that something you kind of
It's perfect.
feel too?
Yeah, I totally agree, because it is those little details that are landing on you so hard, and those flashes, and accentuated by the music in the movie, and it's sort of this feeling of that the whole world has stopped.
Exactly. Right.
And that's just sort of what happens in real life too, and this sort of a moment happens. But I think it's done in a very subtle way in this movie. Like, it's not some like slow-mo shot. It's actually very sweet and
very
tender.
sweet. Yeah, it is.
It's just so beautifully done. And that's what I was referring to, that I smiled through the entire montage, because it's just so sweet. And it's also kind of two people who are a little bit unlikely to be together, I think, which is also what makes it even more charming, And the last thing I would say is that in real life and in meet cute moments in movies, you're looking at the other person through the eyes of the other person.
Right.
And I think
exactly.
this movie does such a great job of kind of really putting you in the point of view of both of them. Like the way she's responding to him with her smiles and glances, and the way he's looking at her, you're instantly put in their shoes, which is the genius of the performances, but obviously Wes Anderson.
No, totally. Yeah. The other thing I really like about this, because you mentioned, unlikely kind of pairings, she barely speaks English.
Yeah.
And it's that first, so when he's attracted to her, that initial scene that I described, then he kind of gets out of the pool and sort of follows her around as she's going to the rooms and like, tidying up.
I love
she's
that.
The maid, and he's just talking to her. Like, she can't understand what he's saying, but he's so fascinated by her and just wants to get to know her. It's just this very mundane. And there's this great shot too. I can't remember if it's the end of this same sequence or like the next day, when they're just sitting in the laundry room and like the towels are getting washed, and it's just very simple. It doesn't have to be a grand, oh, now we're going to Paris at the top of the Eiffel Tower. It could be something as just ordinary as you're just sitting with this person as laundry's getting done, and that all you care about is being with that person. It doesn't really matter what's happening around you and how mundane that is. And that is definitely a feeling where when you get that initial spark, and especially early on in a relationship, I think it is sometimes those mundane things you do together are the most special, as opposed to some grand big thing. And then just the one other scene that I just really also love and just point out here, and then I'd love to get more of your take on this, which is that when he initially he's out there with Dignan in a restaurant, they're like an IHOP. And it's when he really realizes, Luke Wilson's character does, that he is like in love or really cares about Inez. He's like drawing her on the placemat, and he admits to his friend Dignan, like, yeah, like I miss this woman. And Dignan's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm not going to be jealous of you. Like, that's great. He kind of gets approval for his friend, and he immediately like just runs back, and then they like consummate their relationship right there. And that montage of him running towards her with this great song by the band Love playing, it's just, it's really it shows like the power of like connection between two people, and how you just desperately want to be with this other person after really not even knowing them that well. I mean, again, they barely had a conversation. So to me, even though, yes, this is a heist movie and there's a lot of great, I mean, it's one of my favorite films. I think maybe one of the best debuts of any filmmaker ever who's had a long career afterwards. So many things work, but to me, I'll always remember this film about, Anthony and Inez's relationship.
I loved it so much that you put it on your list, because like I said, I'd forgotten this was a meet cute movie, but it is definitely a meet cute movie. I would say two things. One, yes, they don't speak the same language, but that's sort of the charm and the beauty of it,
Mm-hmm.
that I think they understand what the other person is feeling totally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of that is just the other person making you feel that you're heard and seen in a certain way, because they're
Mm-hmm.
both like, I mean, she seems fine, but I don't think she has that in her life. and
No,
and
no.
and with him too, like you said, that he's directionless, and the person that he's hanging out with, who sure on paper literally has some direction, but that is not direction
No, no,
either.
no,
I
no.
mean,
Dignan's a whole other thing that we
whole
could have
other
a whole
thing, like,
podcast about. One of my favorite characters on screen, Owen Wilson's breakthrough
amazing.
debut performance. But yeah, no, totally,
Yeah.
not really a direction. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a sinking ship, for
Totally.
sure. So
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
so for him to sort of be with somebody, you can almost feel like the stillness of the two being together, and in that montage of going from room to room,
Mm-hmm.
for the first time, I think, in a long time, or maybe ever, the two have sort of felt this, I don't know, kinship, this being seen, being heard,
Mm-hmm.
and almost kind of, maybe I'm projecting too much of my own feelings on this, perhaps,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's sort of that feeling of that, yeah, life is worth something in a way,
Right.
and
Totally. Yep.
it's sort of communicated. All of this is communicated in just like a brief 5-10 minute sequence, which is just
Mm-hmm.
so incredible. And you believe it, that he will do anything for her. Like, he
Right.
gives her the money, he's
Yeah.
back, all the things happen, and you totally buy it. So, and then on West, I don't know, this movie made me think of, I wish he would go back and make something
Yes.
like this again, which
Yeah.
is sweet and tender and biting, but without all the symmetry and all the production design
Mm-hmm.
intricacies and meticulousness that we know him now, the whole Russian doll thing, which
Mm-hmm.
I love as well.
Me
But
too.
this movie is just totally stripped down of all of that.
Yeah.
And I would love for him to do something simple like this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he's one of my favorite filmmakers. We've talked
Yeah.
about a lot of his films on the podcast.
Yep.
Folks can go back and listen to those. But I agree with you. And for me, actually, I peg it, to bring it back to Owen Wilson, with the fact that when him and Owen co-wrote his first three features together, Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and then Tenenbaums.
Mhm.
And I think Owen Wilson brings a more like grounded sort of heart to those films. And then when
Mm.
Wes sort of partnered off with Coppola and Baumbach and started writing screenplays with them, to me, I think it lost a lot of the heart in a way, and the movies became less about real life and more about sort of these dioramas. And again, I still love those other films a lot, but I think his partnership with Owen was really special, and those are my three favorite movies that he did. The initial three with Owen, and I think that whatever Owen brings to his screenwriting and these stories, I think is this heart that this movie for sure has a lot of, and doesn't have a lot of his more visual flourishes. As he starts adding those with Rushmore and then Tenenbaums, I do still feel like those movies at least have that heart, and I maybe just accredit that to Owen. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I have noticed the difference in his films after their partnership, at least creatively, ended.
Yeah.
But I think this is very, I kind of wish he would kind of go back to some of this. So maybe he will in the future. He's got 2 movies coming out this year.
Yeah.
One a giant
Very
sci-fi
exciting.
one. So I feel like maybe that one's not not the back to the ground, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Nonetheless, pretty good stuff, and yeah, great filmmaker.
Yeah. Great. Well, why don't we move on to your number 3 movie that shaped your meet cute moment? What are we talking about?
My number 3 movie is The Clock from 1945, starring Judy Garland, Robert Walker, James Gleason. Quick logline. In 1945, during a 48-hour leave, a soldier accidentally meets a girl at Penn Station and spends his leave with her, eventually falling in love with the lovely New Yorker. Directed by Vincent Minnelli and Fred Zinnemann, and realized that Fred Zinnemann also directed this, says uncredited on IMDb. This was my number 3 movie because to me, this movie kind of locks into the earnestness and the innocence of a meet cute, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And you can sort of look at the meet cute through different lenses. And that's sort of how I explored my list. And to me, this is about that, where the world is more innocent than it is now in some ways, although I
Right.
guess this could happen even now. But
Yeah. Yeah, it
yeah, I
could.
mean, the whole sort of plot of somebody who's come back from war, is totally a fish out of water, is just hanging out at the station, doesn't know really what to do. Obviously, we're not getting into any of the PTSD things or whatever life this person has lived, but you can see there is sort of yearning, to live a life. And what better place to do that but New York? But
Right.
also New York is very overwhelming. And what do you do? And there's something very sweet about him and just sweet about his circumstance. And then lo and behold, he has this amazing meet cute moment with Judy Garland, because
Mm-hmm.
accidentally she ends up breaking her heel, because he's sitting on the stairs, and she sort of trips
Over
over
him. Yeah. She trips
uh,
over him. Yeah.
over him, exactly. And then of course she's on the escalator and he's holding the heel, and somehow they come together.
Mm-hmm.
And then what ensues after, yes, there's attraction, but I think a lot of it is just, I don't think they both have anything better to do. And they just sort of hang
Yeah.
out. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
she sort of has to go to work, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, I go back to the chemistry part of the two people. Like even in today's times, let alone in the 40s, you would not spend this much time with a total stranger
Right.
who you just met at the station. But I think they sell it.
Yeah.
There's something so sweet about him, and you see, I think this is one of my favorite Judy Garland performances, maybe one of her few that comes to my mind, sort of adult roles, if you will, where she's
Mm-hmm.
not just
Mm-hmm.
playing like a child or in a
Mm-hmm.
musical or what have you, where and you see the spectrum of emotions on her face of wanting to be there, but also being a little bit apprehensive, but
Right.
still
She's
wanting to be
unsure.
there,
Yeah.
unsure, and but still drawn to him. And so I don't know. I just find that really, really charming and beautiful. And then the movie builds on. Like when she goes back for the dinner, that's sort of on a whim, right? Like somebody tells you with whom you just had this instant connection meet, and they say, "Oh, do you want to meet up later?" And you're like,
Right.
"Sure."
Right.
And then you show up there, and then reality kicks in of like, why am I here, and should I be here, and what have you. And then of course hijinks ensues after that in this movie,
Right.
where somehow they end up spending the entire night together, and through this milk distribution thing, and all sorts of stuff happens in this one night. So I think it's a great kind of movie in a day or 2 day
Right.
period as well. um Obviously, like them getting engaged, or the whole like heist to get engaged, is a little bit kind of off its time. Like this would
Mm-hmm.
not happen today, but it makes sense when you look at it from that point of view. Like this is wartime. War has just ended, and people are kind of looking for something fantastical and amazing and out there to latch onto, to live life king size. And I think both of these people, knowingly or unknowingly, want that. And when they find glimmers of that in each other, they just want to go with it. So,
Right.
and you go with them. And the last thing I would say is Vincent Minnelli's direction. He is the master of all this, right? To make it so sweet and effortless. And so yeah, I watched this movie. And by the way, I should ask, have you watched this movie? Had you watched it before?
No, I never heard of it before. Yeah, never heard of it.
Yeah,
I
it
really
just
enjoyed it though. It was great. I just never, this is not a movie I never heard of.
yeah, I hadn't either until the pandemic. It showed up on Criterion
Oh,
Channel, and I just happened to watch it, and absolutely, maybe I was also in sort of that weird isolated
yeah.
pandemic state of mind, living in New York all by myself. So it kind of really pulled me in. But
Yeah.
I was glad to watch it again and see that it's still held up. What did you think of it?
Yeah, no, I think I liked the movie a lot. I think it did have that, that initial meet cute moment was, again, like I said, sort of super mundane. She accidentally trips over him, and
Yeah.
then, that's how they meet. But what I liked about this movie too is that it sort of shows that that's the, the meet cute is like the trigger, but you have to kind of take advantage. If there's something that you feel there, you have to sort of take advantage of it. Like he then,
Right.
she leaves, but then he chases after her bus, and he's like, "Hey, we should like hang out." And there's the moment when they it's sort of awkward where she kind of pushes him a little bit. She's like, "Yeah, maybe you could go to like this museum to spend your time today." It's
I
just like
love
right
that
over,
back and forth banter.
and like the museum's right over there. He's like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "I've never been there in a long time." She's sort of being like, "Ask me out on a date" kind of thing. So she's
Uh-huh.
then at that point sending signals like, "Come on, just like ask me. I want to go with you. Just all you have to do is say it." I thought that was a
Yeah.
great little scene too. So it shows
Yeah.
both of them, felt something after that meet
Yeah.
cute to enough where that they're like putting a little bit of effort in to kind of push it and see sort of where it goes. Which also I
Yeah.
think is really realistic too. Like, you could have meet cute moments, multiple of them a day, but if you don't either recognize that it's happening or take advantage of it, you never know what can happen. And I like that both of these
Right.
folks are at least in the position where they want to kind of see where it's going. You don't really know a lot about their backgrounds to know
No.
what's kind of motivating them for that. But, like the performances sell it where you're not like asking, well, this is kind of weird. Like, why is she going to a museum with a total stranger? Why is he
Right.
chasing after the bus? It's like something you just sort of accept because of the two lead actors, kind of like one of the things you were mentioning earlier. So yeah, I like that. And I also thought it was interesting throughout the whole, because maybe this takes place over 24 hours, 48 hours. It's not a long
48
period of
hours,
time,
yeah.
but it goes through almost like an entire cycle of a relationship. You have like the initial
Yeah.
meeting where you're kind of feeling it out. You have some attraction. Then you go to like a dinner, and then it's like the reality hits of like, wait, what are we doing? Like, should we really even be
Yeah.
together? And then there's a nice scene that I really liked where I think it's on their second date. They're on a hillside, sort of like overlooking New
Right.
York, and he's talking
Yeah.
about like, oh wow, like what an amazing thing. Like we never should have met. Like my ship came in here, and like he's sort of talking about all these things that had to happen in each of their lives to lead them to that point, which is definitely something, in relationships, you sort of reach that point. It was like, wow, like this is incredible that we happened. All these things had to happen before we met to cause us to meet. Which is something, at least in relationships I've been in, you have reached that stage, you have that kind of conversation. Like, this is cool. Like all these random things that happen. And then, the struggles of them kind of getting married and the wet feet that they have on that. So it's sort of like encapsulated an entire actual relationship in the period of 48 hours, which maybe that's unrealistic and doesn't happen. Usually it's maybe a couple months or a year or something, but it's a movie. And I like how they kind of could tick
And
all
of
those
its
boxes
time
of that.
too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
maybe the people moved faster back in the 40s. I don't know. But
And I think the war context, like I said earlier, is very important. I think that hovers over the whole
interesting.
thing. I don't know if people would be rushing to get engaged or married after like a 2 hour, 2 day thing. Probably, I don't know, maybe not, but whatever it is, I bought it.
Yeah. I actually didn't really think too much about the whole war thing, other than the fact that it was sort of a plot element of like he was going to leave at some point. Like he had to go back to wherever he was stationed or what have you. I was just sort of treating it as, like the destiny kind of like, is this something we should be chasing after or not? But that is interesting. I didn't really think about this from the whole war, but yeah, obviously like the movie was made during that time, and him being a soldier, I do think plays into it. If he were just like a tourist, it might not have been the same
different.
thing. It is very different. But I was very charmed by it. I definitely, like you said, it's a great Judy Garland performance. I never even heard of this other actor who's in it. I don't know who he was, but he did a good job. But she was great.
She was great as well. She was great. The last thing I wanted to mention on this one is that actually two things. What you just said made me think of it, that I've actually never looked at meet cutes with that kind of real life lens. But the fact is, all relationships are actually meet cutes. How people meet,
right,
and how they end up being with each other and whatever happens in their lives. Like, if you really think about it, because you're right, like I've had this conversation with my boyfriend. Oh, we met like this and this happened, and this is what you were wearing, this is what you brought, and this is what I brought, and this is you have such clear memories of that initial meeting, and that couldn't have happened. Maybe I had fallen sick that day, or maybe the person just ghosted me. All sorts of things could have happened, right? So in a way, in our world today, where most people sort of end up meeting online, and perhaps some of the romance and magic of like a true happenstance meet cute is gone. But even so, they're still meet cutes, I think.
Yeah, like I think I would categorize a meet cute as a moment where the two people aren't looking for it and it happens to them sort of
True.
out of their control is how I would define, like, because if you go on a date with someone and that's
True.
how you meet them, I consider that a first meeting, not necessarily meet cute, but maybe we're splitting hairs on that. But I feel like a meet cute is something where neither person is looking for anything and it just magically sort of happens to both of them. But that's where I really associate magic a lot with the whole concept of a meet cute and all those sort of things, which we'll get into a bit later, I think, in one of my picks.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of magic. And then I guess one final thing on this one is that I always imagined, like, not that I've made a list of like, oh, wouldn't it be great if this happened to me? But one of the meet cute things that I would fantasize about a little bit is that, oh, wouldn't it be great if I were in a new city just visiting and just met somebody, like somebody like showed me around, and then magic ensued after. So in my single days, this was one thing that I probably have thought about.
Oh, you keep going to new cities and just stand at street corners trying to trip people and see, like, if you trip the right person, then maybe there's something happens.
A total creeper.
Hey, I don't know.
All right. So what's your number 2?
Okay, so my number 2 film that shaped my meet cute moments is Set It Up from 2018. This is a film directed by Claire Scanlon and starring Zoe Deutsch, Glenn Powell, Lucy Liu, Taye Diggs, and a whole suite of minor kind of comedic actors. The IMDb plot summary: 2 corporate executive assistants hatch a plan to matchmake their 2 bosses. So this film, and why I put this on the list for me, is there is a meet cute in the film between these 2 assistants played by Zoe Deutsch and Glenn Powell, but the initial meet cute does not immediately spark romance, and instead sparks a partnership where they're trying to then set their 2 bosses up. So this really does show that falling for someone, even though you have that meet cute, does take time, and you see them kind of gradually kind of developing a connection and relationship with each other without even them noticing it, which is definitely something that I feel can happen too, where you're sort of accidentally or without even knowing what's going on, kind of starting to fall for someone because of these time you're spending with them and the things you gradually learn about them. So, to get a little bit more into the plot and sort of draw it back to this theme too, is, these 2 assistants, they have the same set of problems. Like, they don't like their bosses. They're making them work too long. They're really not engaged in their jobs. And I think this is something that they bond over too. Like, after this initial meet cute, which is they're both working late at night and they are trying to find order dinners for their boss. And I think it's Zoe Deutsch's food comes, but then Glenn Powell's doesn't. He tries to basically steal the food from her to give it to his boss. And they work out some way to kind of split the food. So they're both immediately kind of solving problems together. But they realize they have the same problems, which is and sort of the same struggles. And I think that's something too that early on in a relationship, at least, can kind of bring you together with someone because you relate on something. Even though it's not necessarily that you both are attracted to one another, like they're constantly sort of, there's a lot of banter back and forth, making fun of each other, jokes back and forth in the beginning. Glenn Powell's even in a relationship at the time. Zoe Deutsch is, I think, very sad about being single, but is single. So it's not like they're looking for love or looking for a connection. But I think that's what can make the meet cute moment magical too, in a way of you're not looking for it. Even that initial connection with or the initial meeting isn't immediately like in my last film, Bottle Rocket, where like there's this instant connection that these folks both have. And I think what this shows is that you never really know what a meet cute is when it's happening. Sometimes you think back like, oh yeah, we did meet like that, even though this wasn't something initially where we're like, let's immediately go out and, we have immediately physical connection or something, because they don't have any of that in the beginning, but they develop it over time as they work on things together, which is, again, something that, a lot of people meet at the office, right? Because you're working on a project together and you spend a lot of time together, and then you sort of develop a relationship like that, which definitely this film kind of shows that side of things, which I think is important part of the beginning of a relationship. And I think it's just fun too, like as an audience member, first of all, it's a romantic comedy. So they're going to get together in the end. even though
Right.
the characters don't know it, and you get to watch them grow their relationship as a audience member because you know where it ends, they don't know where it's going. But it's fun to see like this gradual attraction develop, and the banter sort of switches to a little bit more where you can tell they're kind of flirting banter as opposed to just
Mhm.
like making fun of the other person. I think that's just really fun, just being that third person kind of point of view, watching a relationship develop where the people in it don't even know what's going on, which I thought was really fun. And I just and I'd love to get your thoughts in the film in a second, but just kind of tie up at the end too. Just a line that I really liked is because there's a lot of reasons why these people shouldn't be together. Not
Mm.
only the fact that Glenn Powell was in a relationship that he didn't really like, but they don't really like each other throughout the movie. Like they're not like instantly friends at all. But I think I think it was Glenn Powell who had this line of, all the reasons why it shouldn't work out, but you do it anyway. You try to pursue that relationship anyway. And I think that to me is a sign of really, I don't want to say love yet because it's the beginning of a relationship, but if you want to put all those things aside, recognizing the reasons why you shouldn't be trying to pursue this, but you do it anyway, I think that's a real sign that you might have a successful relationship, or at least some interesting connection will come out of it. So I thought this movie does a really good job of that as well. I don't know. Are you relating to these things too? Do you feel like this is stuff that you've experienced in your life too?
Yeah, no, for sure. And actually, to build on that, I think it's Zoe's friend at her engagement party or something sort of says that you like somebody for who they are, but you love somebody in spite of them,
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like that, which
Right, right.
that's definitely kind of made me teary-eyed because it's so
Hmm.
true. And you see that in these two people as well, that they actually there's a lot that they don't like in each other,
Right.
or don't
Right.
love about each other, but they love each other despite that. And it's
Hmm.
sort of an earned relationship in that sense because they've been through the trenches, literally,
Right.
kind of, trying to make this whole thing come together.
Hmm.
um the other thing I was thinking of, as you said, that it takes time for a meet cute to become something real.
Hmm.
You also see the contrast of that in this movie with the two bosses, where
Yes.
there
Yes.
is an instant connection perhaps, but it sort of makes it's an interesting take that not all meet cutes actually work,
No,
and that
totally.
meet cute was never meant to work. But on surface, they're two high power people who are
Hmm.
obsessed with their jobs and successful and what have you, and probably they did hit it off and that meet cute did work for them, but ultimately they're not good for each other.
No, definitely. I think an interesting point that this movie is, or at least I was reading into it too, is you're right. And the plot of the film is they're trying to set up their bosses. So they're trying to create a artificial meet cute. Like they try to, get them stuck in an elevator together because
Right.
that's a classic thing. That doesn't work. And then they arrange for them to be sitting next to each other at a ball game and force the kissing cam on them. So
Right.
they're trying to artificially create a meet cute and it doesn't work out versus their meet cute was very organic. They were
Right.
down there trying to get the food. And to me, I read that as you can't really the fake meet cute moments of trying to find that or create that moment yourself doesn't work out. That's not a real meet cute. That's not destiny. That's not luck. That's not chance.
Right.
That's just you trying to force it. Even my comment I made earlier about, you going to other cities and trying to trip people. Yeah, you're trying to create a meet cute. So that's not a meet cute.
It's
That
not
is
gonna work.
artificial. It's not going to work like what they're trying to do here with their bosses. So I think that, which again is something that I do believe in, like these real meet cutes are organic, they're natural.
Mm,
And this movie sort of shows a real one versus a fake
a
meet
fake
cute.
one, an
The fake
orchestrated one.
orchestrated. Yes, the orchestrated meet cutes don't work. Work or whatever. Like they don't lead to a real
They don't
relationship.
lead
So
to
that's a really good
something.
point you
Yeah.
make. I think, yeah, that this movie has three meet cutes in it in a way. It's their initial one and then the two that they're trying to set up between their bosses.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then you touched on this, and I think going back to my original list, I feel like this movie really works because of its two lead actors and their
Oh yeah,
performances. Like they're just so good.
totally.
Individually as actors, you really get a sense of who they are as people, but their chemistry with each other is so good. Because yeah, like you said, the audience, even though we know that in the end they're going to get together, you
Hmm.
also have to root for them when they don't know, and you're just going through the
Right.
motions with them. And
Hmm.
that to me is the real chemistry spark test, that and they
Hmm.
have it
Yeah.
from the get-go, actually, even though
Yeah.
they don't know it. And I think that's just such a hard thing to pull off as an actor, that you have to sort of come across as effortless that you don't know it, but yet you know it. Like
Right.
very, very well handled. My only critique on the movie, if there is any, is that um, I think why they stay in these jobs
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit sort of questionable to me, especially for Glenn Powell's character. Like his boss is a VC, and I don't
Yeah.
know why a VC would be the way Tay Diggs is to begin with, like who's just or have assistants like this.
Oh,
I
right,
don't know
right.
if VCs have assistants like this, and even so, if they did, like you could totally go and get like an assistant job with some other VC, or
Mm-hmm.
plus he looks too old to just wanting to be an analyst. So there's
Oh,
some
Glenn.
like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
questionable sort of things of why you would stay with her. I can sort of buy it because she really admires Lucy
Right.
Liu's character,
Mm-hmm.
and she's been a big influence on her, so I can sort of see. But yeah, unlike Devil Wears Prada, where
Mm.
the fashion world is very insular, and
Mm-hmm.
getting some in there, and Miranda Priestley being such a huge deal in the world of publishing and journalism and what have you, you can sort of kind of buy it. And also, we don't know much about the fashion industry, so you sort of play along. At least at that
Right.
time, one didn't.
Right,
But
right.
here, I think there's a little bit of that in the beginning when
Mm.
their jobs are just so insanely, almost comically, absurdly hard that you're like, this is just too unreal to believe, and why someone would put up with this.
Fair, though I will say, as someone who did work as an assistant in Hollywood, that a lot of these problems are
Yeah, in
with
Hollywood,
those
yeah,
were
but not as
definitely
a
true.
VC.
Yeah, I haven't worked as an assistant, and maybe they just chose the wrong,
Yeah,
the wrong
setup.
profession
Yeah,
setup there. But yeah, I mean, maybe that also is a testament to Glenn Powell quitting his. I mean, at the end, he's going through a whole sort of change in his life. He doesn't want to
yeah,
pursue that type of job anymore. Versus Zoe Deutsch is like, I want to still be a writer and sports writer, all
right.
those kind of things. That's true. But yeah, like I really love this. I think this movie is really funny, really
Very funny.
great. Immediately, like when I first watched it several years ago, I'm like, oh, this is like a new, like always going to be in the rotation for me. I think the other thing that is great about this film, just talk a little bit more about the film, just kind of in general, is the supporting cast is so strong. Like there'll be a scene where they're at like a jewelry store, and whoever's playing the clerk, she only has like one or two
Right.
scenes, one or two lines, but she's so comedic. Her timing's on. She nails it. It's like having a deep bench of where it's not
Yep,
just the
that's
four
my point
leads that
number
are funny.
three.
Yeah,
It's
it's like
very important.
everyone in this movie is so
Yeah,
funny, and the writer gives them all little lines and little bits, so it's not just the two
yeah.
leads trying to carry the whole thing. I think it's
Like
really important
Titus,
in
the
comments. Oh my
elevator
god,
guy,
Titus is great in this. Yeah.
everybody, and
The guy in
Lucy
the
Liu.
elevator. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, that big guy in the elevator. He's like, I'm claustrophobic. It's like he has one scene, but it's
yeah,
so funny. And they are able
nails
to
it.
give him the scene and not take away from the two leads who are there, trapped in the elevator with him. I think that's what elevates this movie for me. It's like everything, all the little
Totally,
bit parts really work.
totally. I couldn't agree more.
Cool. So to move on from Set It Up, what is your number two film that shaped your meet cute moment?
All right. I'm gonna take a hard left. So my number two is the movie called Weekend from 2011, directed by Andrew Higgs, starring Tom Cullen, Chris New, Jonathan Race. Quick logline: after a drunken house party with his straight mates, Russell heads out to a gay club. Just before closing time, he picks up Glenn, but what's expected to be just a one night stand becomes something else, something special. So to me, this is on my list because this explores kind of the reality, if you will, of a meet cute, in sort of a very brutally honest, kind of hard. There's romance here for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but there, it's not sort of a quintessential magical
Right.
meet cute moment, but at the same time, tender and very heartfelt and very real.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and then I think it sort of really dives deep into, maybe this is true for straight people as well, but definitely for a lot of gay people, when you're sort of going through the motions of wanting to meet people, wanting to find that connection, which I guess
Mm-hmm.
is universal for everybody, but I guess because, and maybe this is a sweeping generalization, but the whole sort of hookup culture or one
Mm.
night stand culture maybe might be a little bit more acceptable in the gay culture
Yeah.
as opposed to straight culture, but clearly this movie explores that, a little bit, where, again, not to make a generalization, but you see the lead character is sort of going through the motions of kind of living his life a little bit like a ghost, where,
Right, right.
it's not like he doesn't have a job. He has a job. He has friends and all, and even family who love him dearly. But you sort of see this emptiness in him where even when he's finding love through friends and family and people want him around him, he's kind of running away from those,
Right, definitely.
even though he knows that what he's seeking through picking up somebody randomly at a club or what have you is actually not going to lead him to any kind of happiness or fulfillment. He already knows that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost this sort of empty, ghost run. And I've been a part of that kind of feeling for sure in my life. Not to this degree, but, I find that quite relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this whole, in these motions of just doing that, he just stumbles upon somebody who ends up challenging him in a weird way,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of brings out his sweetness, because this other person is actually very cynical,
Yes,
is also in his own way running away from life. He's actually going to
definitely.
leave the UK and move to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And he, just the way the lead character is sort of lost in the silence of his life, this other guy that he picks up is lost in the noise of his life. He has tons of friends, a
Right.
lot of loud partying, a lot of loud drinking, all of that stuff. But I think the common thing between them is the loneliness and is sort of the ghostliness of life. And they somehow meet each other and challenge each other. And I think the lead character kind of softens the other person with his sweetness, and the other character, who is sort of prickly and a little bit sort of abrasive and out there, challenges the other person to see life for what it is and step out of it, of this, or snap out of this kind of rigmarole ghostly life that he's been leading. So yeah, the meet cute itself is probably not very cute here, because they just meet at a
At a
club,
bar, right,
although
right.
it's sort of an awkward thing as to how that happens.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think, to me, what is incredible is sort of how they then get to know each other, how they kind of almost lose it, whatever they have, but then they save it at the end. And that's when, spoiler alert, uh, the romance and the magic does come in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I watched this movie years ago. I've watched it since a couple of times, and it's sort of stayed with me. So I don't know if you'd ever watched this movie before, and what did you think?
Yeah, I never heard of it before.
Mhm.
And I thought it was very impactful and powerful in a lot of the ways that you've already touched on. But the thing that I related to was that in the beginning of a relationship, in a weird way, like you don't really know the person that well. And maybe this is just kind of me, but you can almost ask more personal questions. And
Yeah,
in the very beginning, like after they've had their one night stand, one of the non-main character, I can't remember the character's names, but the
Glenn.
non-main Glenn is not the main. Is Glenn's not the main character?
No, I think actually I forget their actual screen names,
Oh,
but
okay. Well, the
uh,
non-main character guy, like he's doing an art project where he like records all of his hookups and asks them all these questions. So yeah, there's a bit of a conceit for that, but I do feel that in an odd way, like in the very beginning, those stages, you can get very personal because you don't really know the person yet,
yeah,
and there isn't almost the guard that comes up when it's like, okay, well now we're in this relationship, so I have to be careful about what I say because I don't want to lose it. But because they've
hmm,
just had a one night stand, it's like they're thinking, look, I'm never going to see this guy again. I might as
right,
well, yeah, just be totally honest. I
yeah,
think that is something that does happen in the beginning of a relationship, and it really helps both characters, but especially the main character, yeah, kind of like break out of his shell and really realize who he is. I mean, I think that is something that obviously, like if you're with someone for a long period of time, they bring that out in you too, and you can like be a better person. But you can also do that with like a one night stand or a very short
yeah.
relationship can have the same impact on your life if it's with the right person and the kind of the right circumstances. So I thought that was like a very interesting reflection on a relationship where, it's called Weekend. I don't know if that's a spoiler in terms of how long they ended up kind of staying together, which I guess it is. But they're not together for very long. They don't really, it's like you get to see them get to know each other gradually. And actually, it's funny too, because in the beginning, they're very personal. And then there's
Mm,
a stage when they start getting angry at each other about their
right.
personal beliefs. So they've crossed this chasm of like, okay, now we're close enough where like I can get mad at you for what you're sharing.
Right.
Whereas in the beginning, you're just super curious. You're asking like deeply personal questions and the other person's sharing it. And I think that is definitely reflective, at least of my experience at the beginning of relationships. There is that phase. And then sometimes you don't get past the second one where they're like, oh, actually, I don't like you. Like, this isn't really working. We're done. But there is that phase like, I barely know you. So yeah, like tell me your deepest, darkest secrets. And you feel like sharing it because like this person really doesn't mean anything to you yet. You might never see them again. So fine, share it. Exactly. So I really liked that part of the film. I thought it was a really good reflection of the beginnings of a relationship after that initial meeting, especially when you don't think it's going to last. Because with even a meet cute or whatever, like you have no idea whether this is going to go anywhere. No. You're only in the first couple weeks or dates or whatever it is. So there's like almost like you're more vulnerable. It's kind of weird. I don't know if this is making sense to you. If you relate to that,
it makes total sense because you have nothing to lose.
Right.
But I think also it does matter who is the other person on the other end.
Yes, right.
There is something about these two people, their own sensibilities and such that, like you said, they sort of happen to just meet each other at this point where life is a little bit sort of upside down. One is a ghost, the other is about to run away. And so there's a little bit of, who cares? But then there's also a little bit of genuine interest. And then they build on each other. And then you're right. Like at some point, then that becomes too much. And there's a little bit of clashing, but there's also a little bit of, oh, have I shared too much?
Right.
Has this gone too fast? Or are there now expectations suddenly? Because in the beginning, there are no expectations. So
exactly.
You're fighting that then as well. But then you're also fighting that, oh, I don't know where this is going to go. So it just starts to get more complicated, which is so true with any relationship as you kind of cross that initial milestone. So, yeah, but I'm glad you really enjoyed it.
I did, yeah. And I think I know we haven't finished all of our films, but I'll just make a general statement that this one, is definitely the most grounded and realistic of all the movies that we have talked about and we will talk about. I thought it was I don't know, refreshing, maybe not the right word, but to have something that is very real and could be believable, but then it still has some of that magic in it too, because these people, even though it was a random kind of hookup that started it, it was the right person at the right time that each of them were meeting to help them, even though they're not staying together long term. During that weekend, they're helping each other in different ways, and there is like a magic and a sense of destiny to that. So it's sort of nice to see that, you can, something that is incredibly believable happens all the time. One night stands after a night out at a club or something. There still can be something there that is special, even if it doesn't last. So I liked that part of this film too. It's definitely, again, I'd never heard of this movie before, but the performances, particularly of the main guy, I was like, this is so good. Like I really liked him.
He's so great. Andrew Hick, the director, he's amazing. He's directed a bunch of stuff. I highly recommend 45 Years with Charlotte Rampling and his name is on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, I recommend people. He's a great director, and Tom Cullen is great.
Yeah.
And he was in Downton Abbey and a bunch of other good stuff as well. So really glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for putting on
the last scene at the station. Yeah, always sobbing. Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Totally.
All right. It's number one time.
Yeah, it's number one time. So to take it to the other end of the realism spectrum, as opposed to be completely magical and in a way, arguably unrealistic, is my number one. It's Serendipity from 2001. This is a movie directed by Peter Chelsom, starring John Cusack, Kate Beckinsale, Jeremy Piven, Molly Shannon, and then there's a bunch of other kind of well-known actors in there as well. The plot summary from IMDb: a couple searched for each other years after the night they first met, fell in love, and separated, convinced that one day they'd end up together. So for me, the reason why I put this on my list, and it's definitely the number one movie for me, is that, I feel that meet cutes can feel like a destiny, or that there are forces bringing two people together beyond your own control. Like something magic is going on here, because love is mysterious and magical anyway. How you feel. So especially at the start of a relationship, you do feel like this is not just a random happenstance of events, but that there's something else that's more magical there that kind of created that random happenstance to happen. Because in this film, it's about these Kate Beckinsale and John Cusack, and they meet trying to buy this pair of gloves together. So that's kind of their meet cute, and it's kind of fun too. In the opening of the film, they start sort of showing the gloves get stocked on the shelf, so it's like you kind of immediately know as an audience there's something magical about this. It's a sense of magic kind of goes through this whole film. So that's their initial meet cute. Then they even have a second meet cute afterwards. So it's like first they try to buy the gloves together and John Cusack ends up giving them to Kate Beckinsale. They go to a restaurant afterwards and they both leave the restaurant and they both forget something at that same restaurant. So they go back again and it's like, oh, well, this is happenstance. Like not only do we have one meet cute in a way like it's a second one, then they even have a third when they're trying to kind of prove destiny is either right or wrong. They go into this elevator bay at the Waldorf. I think it's the Waldorf Astoria. Mm-hmm. And they each kind of like, okay, get in the elevators and you pick a number and I pick a number and we'll end up on the same floor. And even though they do both pick the same number, the audience knows that, John Cusack kind of gets distracted. So it's kind of like putting, this destiny to the test. And that ends up driving them to be thinking about this other person even years later. Like then the movie cuts to years later and they're all still, both of them are still thinking about this other person. So they're clearly like there's a connection there that they had. And that there's even more destiny that's kind of like signs start showing up in both of their lives that they're meant to kind of be together. And that is something too that, I feel you start either looking for those things or you notice them more when you do have a connection with someone. The universe is sort of trying to tell you in certain ways that you're meant to be together. You're meant to at least, pursue a relationship. So, there's a sequence where like her name is Sarah and like everyone around him is named Sarah, talking about Sarah, and he can't get Sarah out of his mind. And she's in the other side of the country and sees a movie poster of his favorite movie. And it's those little things that, again, is magic and is unrealistic in a way. But, I think that is something that you can feel. And I have felt in relationships where you see the universe giving you these signs. And if you look for them, it's not that it's forcing you to do anything. So I think this movie is trying to say, and this is what I believe too, like there isn't like predestination in terms of the universe kind of force you to make choices, but it's guiding you in a way, and you have to make the choice, which also is something that I like about this film too. Like, both of them are getting signs all over the place that, hey, you should be with this person, but they have to put the effort in to actually pursue the relationship. Like Cusack has to leave his wife, or, actually before that, or not his wife, his fiance, he's trying to then find the receipt for the, the gloves to track down Kate Beckinsale's character name because he doesn't really even know her last name. So it's not that destiny, you can just kind of sit back and destiny will just give you the person you're meant to be with and everything's going to be fine. You do have to put effort into it. You can't just kind of sit back. So, and maybe this is a little more of my like life philosophy too, because I do believe most things are predetermined and that you do not have as much agency in your life in general as you might think. But that at the same time, it's just about the choices you make. But so you do have the agency in that, but the universe is speaking to you. And I do think that is the case with love for sure. That at least when you feel that certain way, you do sometimes feel that the universe is guiding you a certain direction. So, I think this movie can be silly because it is in a way, but I do believe that this is true. I do believe in serendipity and destiny and forces beyond your control are sending you signals. So I guess I'm more susceptible to be, kind of buying into the vision of what this movie is setting out. I don't know, maybe
you're a softie, Alex.
I know.
Gosh.
No, it's funny too. Like I was recommended this. I didn't see this when it first came out. I was like, oh, this is whatever, silly. And I only saw it recommended to me at a time when like I was starting to look at life in a way more about like that you have no agency. A lot of different. I've changed a lot of my life philosophy at this point around believing more in things being predetermined and less about your own kind of control. So it kind of hit me then at the right time. And now like this is a movie that I watch quite often and do definitely believe in this a lot. So. Yeah, I guess, soft, whatever you want to call it. I believe in the magic of the meet cute being something where it is destiny and it is, you just have to look for the signs. There's always signs out there that help you lead you in the right direction.
I believe in that too, for sure.
You do? Okay. Because I get if you don't, this movie is not like, is even stupider than I think it even appears to people like me that do believe in this.
No, I do believe in that. I had not watched this movie until like this past week.
Not
for some
surprised.
reason. I don't know. Yeah,
it's not
why
like
this sort of.
well known necessarily. It wasn't like a big
It
hit. You
is.
think it is? Okay. Maybe I'm
It
selling it short.
definitely is. And I watched, the 90s rom-com is one of my favorite genres. It's
Right.
something, as 90s kids, we grew up on it. So I don't know, for some reason, I just had never watched this movie. So I have to caveat everything I'm going to say that we've said this on the pod before, which is that a lot of it comes down to when do you meet the movies in your
Right.
life and
Right.
such. And to me, this feels like a very 90s time capsule movie. And
Mm-hmm.
if I had watched this movie back then when it had came out, or maybe even sort of 2000s, such, when I was, maybe a little bit younger and less cynical, I would have been like
Oh.
all floored by it. That said, though, I
Yeah.
still believe in the themes of the
You do.
movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the way the movie is handled, and such a hallmark card of a movie it is, that, like you said, it's quite silly. And
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately, maybe I'm just not into John Cusack. You had a couple of his movies
Yeah.
on before, and
Yes.
I
Yes.
just struggle with him and his, yeah, he doesn't exude what I would expect this character to exude. So I think that to me is sort of why the movie sort of falls a little bit, or quite a
Right.
bit, and it's hard to kind of get over that. Um, that said, I still enjoyed it, and it's very tropey, and
Oh,
the whole
totally.
like San Francisco New Agey Indian aged in sort
I
of
love that.
thing
Yeah.
was hilarious. I mean, this is a movie which is not going to be in my, like, it's good that it's bad sort of movies, that you can really
Totally.
laugh at it and laugh with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what, I'm not, some stone cold monster, but at the end, when they do get together, I shed a tear as well, because
Yeah.
you are kind of wrapped up with these people and their quest. And but yeah, the theme of the movie of, there are always these signs and you have to ultimately make the choices. I do believe in that for sure. And I think this movie hits you over the head with that. So
Definitely. Yeah, no, it definitely does. And it's funny, like I feel like I've become less cynical as I've grown. I feel like I definitely
yeah,
saw that. I'll tell you that if I saw this in 2001 when it came out,
you
I
would
would
have
have thought it's
left
the
the theater
dumbest thing.
screaming.
Yeah. I'm like, this is the
Yeah.
dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, I don't believe in this. Like, blah, blah, blah. And I guess as I've gotten older, I've been more and more of this kind of philosophy that there is destiny, there is something else out there that's kind of giving you the signs of things you should do.
Yeah.
But and I will say, is I know we've talked about Cusack before, and that for
Yeah.
me, like he's a very important like
Yeah.
avatar for my own personality and things in various
Right.
movies. So I think I'm predestined. Talk about destiny
You're
to like things with him
predispositioned.
in it. I'm
Yeah.
predispositioned to like a John Cusack performance. So I know you're not. He doesn't rub you in the same ways he does me. But yeah, I'm glad you saw it and at least aren't completely like you believe in this at least enough to kind of get something out of it. But yeah, it is like a hallmark, which I love that genre too of like
Right.
romantic comedies. I love the Hallmark films, and the sappiness of it is what I think love is sappy in the best ways possible. And that's what makes it so special. But yeah, I'll also want to shout out, similar to my last film Set It Up, I think there's a great like supporting cast here. I mean, Jeremy Piven, who also I love, just does a great job as a best friend. Molly Shannon's great. John Corbett's great. Eugene Levy has some good scenes in there too. So it's another thing where you want to put in a lot of side characters around the main leads that keep the laughs coming, to make for a good comedy. But
Yeah, that was my other thing. Like, I like all of those people, but apart from Eugene Levy, the rest of them, like their motivations and why they're doing this and such, I sort of struggle with that quite a bit as well. Like, especially Jeremy Piven, like,
oh
who's
really?
just,
You didn't
I didn't buy it. Like, why would anyone just go on this quest and totally give up their own life? And I guess I get it. Like, I'm supposed to live through this movie in some alternate reality that's a little bit more fantastical, and I don't know. There's something mysterious about these movies that has to kind of land
mm-hmm.
perfectly
Right.
for
Yes.
one to get to that place where you suspend disbelief and you just go with
Totally.
it. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, that just didn't happen with me. I guess for as I've been thinking about the movie, because the movie has stayed with me
Oh,
despite the
okay.
fact that I didn't
Really,
fully.
that into it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, the thing that would sort of really make this movie hit home for me is that if the two leads were just fleshed out a little bit more, as to who they are, what do they believe in, and why do they believe in, especially Kate Beckinsale's character, who's kind of this two-dimensional believe in fate, destiny person across the board from the get-go. It's, I think, that stuff that maybe takes it away from me, but yeah, I still had a good time, I will say.
Yeah, I thought the Kate Beckinsale piece, they were doing something interesting with her character and then kind of dropped it where when we see her years later, she
Yeah.
feels like she's given up on destiny.
Yeah, I thought so too.
And I
But
was like,
then,
this is interesting.
yeah,
Whereas John Cusack now, he's still, madly trying to find the book with her number in it. Like he's a full-on believer and she kind of moved away from it. And then it seemed like she very quickly kind of snapped back in.
Right.
So I think they could have done a better job with that because that was interesting. Oh, now she's a psychologist and she's
Right.
not, she, is trying to steer people away from destiny in the first scene with her patient. She's like, this is, you have agency, control of your own life.
Right.
To argue with you there. And just one note on Piven, I think with him, I kind of got his motivation as being, he was someone who didn't believe in any of these things. And he, you learn that in his marriage, it's sort of they're having problems having the spark again. So I think what he was so excited by this is a chance to kind of fall in love with love again by believing in destiny, going on this journey. He was like hoping that Cusack would find this girl because then it proves that like love is real and that it reignites his then passion with his wife and he goes back to her at the end and hopefully for their marriage's sake that works out. But that's sort of what I interpret it as, like him losing the romance and here's an opportunity for him to see real romance in his life and then that ends up kind of going back on him. But I also love Piven too. Like he's one of those guys I've always been, I don't know, have an affinity for since the 90s and PCU, a movie we've talked about already.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I'm glad it stuck with you and just put a little more destiny in your life,
Bring me back those 90s Rachel blunt cut hairstyles.
Exactly.
I mean, the whole thing is just
the time capsule. It's a time capsule.
It's a total time capsule. It's hilarious.
Totally. Okay, so that was Serendipity. Why don't we move over to your number one film? I think it's similar time period, sort of 90s, right? We're back in the 90s still.
Similar time periods, and I guess I can't be all high and mighty because my number one is Notting Hill. Directed by Roger Michell, written by Richard Curtis, should be mentioned, starring Julia Roberts, Hugh Grant, a bunch of other folks. Quick logline: a life of a simple bookshop owner changes when he meets the most famous film star in the world. So I had to go with, the fantasy of it all. And this is what this movie captures for me. The fantasy and the magic, the stuff that people don't believe in. But and sounds like you do too, believe in. So
I do, yes.
Yeah, this is why this movie is here. And, to me, it's the movie star stuff is a whole other thing. And we can get into that. And I love that secretly this movie is also a movie about Hollywood, especially from like a press tour standpoint, which is very illuminating. And learned a lot. But I think to me, this movie has always resonated because of Hugh Grant and his character, of how his, once again, sort of lonely, mundane, but, loved life in a beautiful part of the world, kind of changes overnight. And unlike the other meet cutes that we've talked about, where the two people want to be with each other because there's attraction and they want to sort of make that happen. Here, it's actually quite layered. Like Julia Roberts is a massive star. She's kind of playing a version of herself. She's sort of in this and, goes on with the meet cute because it's giving her a bit of a hideout. And it's kind of a refreshing thing that, she's hanging out with like a nobody as opposed to the life that she normally has, versus he actually has no agency. He just starstruck. And is sort of just in it and sort of for the ride. So I don't even think that he knows that there is attraction there. I mean, there is because you're with a movie star, but I don't think it's sort of fully felt. And I think that's an interesting take where the power dynamics and power balance between the two people who are in the meet cute is just so vastly different that it creates like, a whole other dynamic, which I think is quite interesting. I also love, and by the way, I should stop there and say, had you watched this movie before or no?
No, I'd actually, I'd never seen this. I don't want to say avoided it, but I don't like
Mm.
Julia Roberts or
I
pre
know this
like
about you.
yeah, pre 2012 Hugh Grant was on my like do not watch list too. Though
Oh
now he's on it
no.
and I love him, but I'll get to my thoughts on the film actually, but I was yeah, I had not seen this. I had not seen this before. Yeah.
Okay. Um, but yeah, and then I think what I love is about this movie is how it progresses. And even though there's this power dynamics imbalance and he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have much agency, but you see a lot about his character, and he comes through and he stands up for himself, which he didn't really have to per se. And then after everything that happens, you sort of see her actually meeting her where he's at, as opposed to the other way around, which I thought is interesting. The other thing I would say is that about this movie that always has caught my heart is his own sort of family friend life. Like
Oh
that,
yeah,
that
yeah.
intro dinner is probably in my top 10 or 20 of movie moments for, ever, because it's
Mm-hmm.
just so funny and sweet and heartfelt, and I just want to be at that dinner table.
Oh yeah, classic
Uh,
Richard
I,
Curtis. Like classic,
yeah,
like the dialogue and the
great
character
writing,
dynamic is just like he's nailing it. Yeah.
nailing it. And like you said, like this probably of all the movies that we've touched on, and at least for me, in terms of the kind of the side peripheral players and the cast in general, everybody is just absolutely incredible. Who's
Totally. Yeah.
along for the ride. Not to mention, Riz, his roommate, who's
Yeah.
sort of annoyingly irritating but charming at the same time. And I don't know. I also watched this movie when I guess I was in my phase of watching a lot of British stuff and kind of falling in love with it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an interesting contrast where, the preppy, slightly posh, bumbling, adorable Hugh Grant versus sort of the crass, out there, literally out there, friend of his, a roommate of his. So I don't know. I find this, though it's silly and what have you, I find this very charming, and it's a great, you know, opposite forces of sweet,
Mm-hmm.
adorable, sometimes annoying person versus magnetic, sometimes mean, selfish person. And I think there is an interesting thing between the two actors, but also the two personality types, which you don't often see that. I think it's actually way more layered as a
Mm-hmm.
character study of these two people and their worlds than a typical rom-com movie could be or would be, thanks to Richard Curtis's
Right.
writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I avoided this film. I guess though I love Richard Curtis, like
Mm-hmm.
Blackadder, Mr. Bean are some of my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
TV stuff. So I was surprised that I enjoyed this movie actually.
Oh, good.
So I think the two things that helped me were first of all, like I do not really like Julia Roberts, and now that she's sort of gone, she's less in your face, gone, or like she's not really in movies anymore as much, and it was easy for me to swallow her there. And then with Hugh Grant, who I really didn't like for the longest time, my opinion on him has changed in the last 10 years as he's sort of gone to more self-deprecating, kind of playing like
Mhm.
a jerk in movies. Now I kind of like him, so I can kind of relate a little bit more. And it's interesting, like to me, I read this movie as a movie about when you're in a relationship but you feel like you're inadequate, like you're with
Mhm.
someone who's hotter than you, or you're with someone who makes more money than you, or whatever it is. Like you feel like there's this power dynamic there,
Mhm.
but you still like the person, but you feel like you don't deserve to be in the relationship that you're in. And that was, I was really focused on Hugh Grant's journey in this film, maybe just
Same.
as the guy, right? I focus more on the guy, and I'm not
I think the movie
a
is
movie
from his point
star.
of view for
It
the
is.
most
No,
part,
true. It is
Yeah.
definitely on his point of view. So I felt this movie was about his journey to like, oh, maybe I feel something with this woman, but I'm not in the same league as her. She's a movie star. And then as they're going about their relationship and kind of starting things, he's still sort of like, oh, kind of embarrassed to sort of be around her. And these are all natural feelings. You don't have to be dating a world, known movie star to be feeling inadequate in a relationship of like, oh, I feel like I'm the one who's not supposed to be in this. Those are definitely, I think, feelings that a lot of us have had in various relationships. And it's about that journey of sort of realizing, no, like the love and the care that you have for this person actually makes you then feel very comfortable. And at the end, I think, with the end of the movie where now they're pregnant and or she's pregnant, and they're on this back in one of the first places they met in that park bench, you really get the sense that Hugh Grant is no longer kind of feeling undeserving. Like he feels safe now with her, which is something that I think if you're in it for the long haul and you have a real connection and there's real love there, those feelings of inadequacy kind of fall to the wayside. And so I was sort of tracking that journey of his character and making it more about dating someone who you feel like you're not worthy of. And Richard Curtis was just kind of taking it to the extreme and like, oh, this is like a world-class celebrity who no one would ever run into, a Julia Roberts somewhere and strike up a conversation with her. And this never would happen. But what does happen is something a little more grounded of, you're with a girl or a guy and you feel like I shouldn't be with this person, but I feel like I love them. They're giving me attention. This is weird. Like, but you don't really feel like it's going to ever work out. And then, it does if there's that love there and you prove to each other that, you do, like Julia Roberts, I think just proved to him that like, you were my safety. Like you do serve a purpose to me. Like you're not just some random fling of like, oh, I want to be with a Joe Q public. It's like, no, like I'm escaping a life that I don't want to be in. And you're that safety. You're that home for me. And I think that helped him just realize that this was something real and not something that was just, she was using him for some particular reason.
Exactly. And I think she finds a lot more in that too.
Yes, she does.
On her own journey because she, feels that escape and what have you in the beginning, but clearly there are other forces sort of pulling her back. And she has to go through her own journey to realize that, well, actually what I have been missing in my life is this. So,
right.
So I think it sort of makes sense. Also, the way they play on, a famous person is in our midst is, I think, some of the best reaction acting.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah.
I've seen across the board. Like,
yeah,
it made me think of it because, as you were saying, this would probably not happen to most of us, but if it did, it would be kind of crazy and incredible. And I think they pull it off. Like, and I think there's a big audience surrogate moment happening there too, because we know who she is,
right?
And we know how improbable this would be. So when this does happen, and I remember like watching this movie the first time with my jaw open, my mouth open the entire time, the first 20 minutes, that, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. So
right, yeah,
you really felt that.
Definitely, and I think that's where the key of having Julia Roberts be in that role, which it was interesting that it made me think like there's a lot of roles she was doing around that same time where she was basically playing herself. America's Sweethearts and then the Ocean's movies. She's playing she actually literally played Julia Roberts in the second one. Just kind of an odd turn for a career. But if this was another actress, actually I was reading up on this a little bit that like Nicole Kidman was really trying to get into this role. And Richard Curtis said like, you're not famous enough. Like, you're not the right thing. And I think he was right. Like, it's great. Right. I mean, I love Nicole Kidman even better than Julia Roberts as an actress, but you needed someone who the audience was like, oh my God, that's Julia Roberts. Like, if it was someone, again, to pull from Serendipity, like Kate Beckinsale playing a celebrity, it's like, okay, well, like, okay,
there's you're not bringing enough quality to this.
You need that. You need that in there, and that makes the audience again really relate to that dinner table scene of like, you think, what if Julia Roberts was like hanging out with my friend's apartment? Like, I would, even though I'm not a fan of hers, like I would still be like, oh my God, this freaking Julia Roberts. Like, you need that angle in there. I think she does a great job in playing this part too. As much as I'm not a big fan of hers, I think I was sort of understanding in certain scenes like, oh yeah, she does have that thing that people love. Like, it was kind of affecting me a little bit. I was like, oh, Julia Roberts.
I'm glad.
Like,
I'm a big fan of hers. Always have been. And I think it's pretty, I don't want to use the word brave, but I think it's pretty daring of her to do a part like this.
Agreed.
Height of her powers and kind of play a pretty unlikable, selfish person at times, but also let the audience see the charm and the magnetism and all of that come through as well. So I'm very glad that you like this movie. What were some movies that didn't make your list?
I had some perennial ones. We've longtime listeners of the podcast. Like, I always bring up Pitch Perfect, so I have to throw that in there. And Titanic. Those two movies to me easily could have made this. Also, Out of Sight, Punch Drunk Love, 10 Things I Hate About You, The Apartment, and Chasing Amy were the other ones that were on this list for me. What about you? What are the other ones that didn't make it?
Good choices. Harry Met Sally, which almost made it, but I
Mm.
sort of went for a different thematic angle, so I had to drop it.
Uh-huh.
Obviously quintessential
Oh yeah.
cute rom-com,
The classic. Yeah.
foundational and classic movies.
Mm-hmm.
The Holiday, which we've talked about in the
Mm.
past. Parent Trap, the new one, the
Oh.
Lindsay
Oh yeah.
Lohan one.
Great movie. Yeah.
So yeah, those are some of mine.
Nice, nice. Cool. Yeah. So this is a really fun episode. I mean, I hope one of the things I think that the takeaways for me just as rethinking this is, just to be open, for those folks out there
Mhm.
that aren't, it's Valentine's Day coming up soon. If you're not kind of with someone, just be open to, you never know, like the person tripping you at the store or, because just be available, like, and ready for destiny to kind of come, because you never know when it's going to happen. And if someone does trip you at the store, okay, like, just see what happens. You never know.
Exactly.
maybe
Don't
you'll end up
stand
marrying
and
them in
smack
48
them.
hours. Or
Yeah.
or stand up and smack them. Like, look, I'm not saying you always have to be, following this, but you kind of know. I do feel like, as again, watching these movies and thinking back to you kind of know if you're in that meet cute moment, and just take advantage of it, because maybe it's just a 48-hour thing like The Weekend, or maybe it's something like Serendipity where they actually show that they end up getting married at the end. So you never know. Life
You
takes
never
its
know.
odd turns.
Exactly. And I would say for the ones who are in relationships, keep finding room for the meet cutes in your life.
Yes, yes.
The meet cute isn't, yeah, traditionally, classically, it is with somebody you don't know, but I think we can always conjure up a little meet cute. So
Yeah, have the magic, kind of like Jeremy
Yeah.
Piven in Serendipity. It's like, just, you're with someone, you're past the meet cute phase, but there can still be magic in a relationship. And that's what keeps going back down for me. Like, the meet cute is a magic moment. And
Yeah.
those never stop if you're with the right person. So
Totally.
keep finding that magic out there.
Totally. So what are we talking about next, Alex?
Yeah, so next episode, we're talking about our sense of adventure and the movies that shape that. So moving on to something still fun, but maybe a little more outside of the box than Meet Cute, though in a way it kind of relates, because Meet Cutes can be kind of an adventure too. So
Definitely, you could get married after 2 days of knowing somebody.
Exactly.
That's an adventure.
That is an adventure, definitely. Yeah. So hopefully listeners are intrigued by that topic, and we'll be back in your feed in 2 weeks talking about adventure. And for those new listeners who just joined us in this episode, make sure to follow us on your podcast network of choice. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're everywhere. We also have a YouTube channel as well. We're uploading content. So whatever platform you want to continue this conversation with us on, please do so.
All right. We'll see you next time. Until then, I'm just a girl in front of a boy asking him to love her.
I kind of forgot that line was from that film. So great though. Yeah, I did. I actually did.